In the last module, we looked at the idea of equity and the ways we might be able to bring this idea into our work as tutors. We looked at the systemic factors that influence perceptions of power and the ways you can address these factors in yourself and in your tutoring sessions so your students' knowledge and learning practice can be respected. Now, we're going to take this process a step further from this systemic focus into the personal realm of your students' social and emotional connection to their learning. So, let's start with important point number 1. What is social emotional learning? When you hear social emotional learning, what do you think of? What do you know about SEL? Take a few minutes now to write in your notebook about what you know about social emotional learning. As I talk about this first point, think about and refer back to what you just wrote. If you said that social emotional learning is part of all learning, you'd be on the right track. But it's best to be aware of it in a tutor-student relationship so your teaching reflects the empathy and valuing of your students' personal experiences and past narratives. And branching out from that, your student brings cultural, societal, and global contexts into the learning environment that you should be aware of and sensitive to. In the last lesson, we talked about foundations of knowledge. But it's not just about knowledge, it's also about feeling, belonging, and awareness. Social emotional learning, SEL, is an approach that activates these additional elements to not only address inequities, but also establish a vital teacher-student relationship. CASEL, that is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, is a trusted source for knowledge about high-quality, evidence-based SEL, and has completed extensive research in this area. It defines SEL as the process. It defines SEL as the process through which people acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Before we go on, let's first reflect on some of the equity dimensions we need to bring into SEL because it is important to connect the two as you work. Let's watch this video from Dina Simmons.
Think about the future. I cannot think about the past. I think about myself, a little black girl in the Bronx, and my experience and my journey to get to be standing right here, right now, and all the pedigree and social capital that I acquired, and how damaged I am now, and how every single day I pick up pieces of myself. So when I think about the future of SEL, and I think about schooling and education in general, I have to ask this question. How can we practice and implement SEL to ensure that it doesn't cause harm? And I think it's important for us to know that most of the time where we do our education or schooling initiatives, it has happened within a broken system of education with a history of exclusion and inequity. Our schooling system is inequity by design. So when we think about what we implement and what we do, we have to think about the larger system and the larger context to ensure that we're not perpetuating the damage and the harm that is done to too many students like me. Too many students who look like me. And so I can't help asking this second question. What is our why? What is our why? And so some of us who've been here in these past 2 days have been thinking about, why are we doing this work? When I was at my pre-session, school climate came up, academic achievement came up. We know what the research tells us. But in my travels and the work that I've done with schools and districts throughout the nation, I have seen that that why changes depending on the students. So that when we're speaking about Black and brown students, that SEL is about remediation. It is about saving Black and brown children from themselves. It is about compliance and following rules. But when I speak to other districts with privileged kids, it's about college and career readiness. It's about enhancement. So when we think about this work, and if our why is different depending on who we're speaking about, we have to ask ourselves, how are we complicit in injustice? How are we complicit in the harm and the damage that happens to our young people? Bettina Love talks about, she's from the University of Georgia, some of y'all know her. She talks about the spirit murdering of our young people. We have to ensure that this work that we do is not spirit murdering our children. But I will add, too, that many of the teachers and educators in the room have also been spirit murdered. Every single day, like I said, I am picking myself up. It is important for us to know, too, good intentions don't equal good outcomes. Just because you mean well does not mean that the outcome is going to be good. I can't tell you how often when I was growing up, going to boarding school in Connecticut, and how often people came to me and said, "Oh, Dina, you're so articulate." And I would say, and that was, the intention was good, but the way I received it was as if they didn't believe that I could be. Or how often people think my hair is awesome. Thank you, all I know. And how often folks would, put their hand in my hair, and how often I felt dehumanized or like a spectacle. Don't touch my hair. Good intentions don't equal good outcomes. And my second point is that anything can be used as a weapon. I sleep with a bat near my bed because growing up I felt very unsafe when it got dark. A bat is for baseball, but I can use it as a weapon. So we have to be very careful and really critical about how we think about the work that we do and ensure that we have a broken system. And if we don't think widely and strategically and deliberately about this system that is broken, anything can be used as a weapon. So this work of equity, of achieving equity, requires courage and discomfort. I know that some of the things I said today may make people feel a little uncomfortable, but it's through that discomfort that we grow. It is through that discomfort that we try to do better and be better. And I'll also just, since I'm speaking from the heart, every single day when I walk into this world, I feel uncomfortable. Because when I walk into the room, the first assumption that people have about me is not a positive one. So every single day I feel uncomfortable. How do we create and change the system so that the two gentlemen who spoke up here earlier today have different options? That is our work. And it's hard. And it takes courage, and it's going to be uncomfortable. How many of you are about that life? I want to hear from you. How many of you are about that life? So in closing, I would say for this work to happen, we have to apply an equity lens. Actually, you know what? We just have to start seeing what it is. We don't like to say what it is because we don't like to talk about race in this country. We cannot heal our wounds if we don't tend to them. So we need to apply an equity and an anti-racist lens. So I leave you with one question, which is, how can we leverage SEL to create the social change that we need? That is not a question for you to not just to ponder, but this is an action plan for you. What is your action plan to ensure that we leverage SEL to create the social change we so desperately need? Thank you.
CASEL's framework, updated in 2020, establishes the 5 areas of competence, which are helpful in thinking about SEL and creating healthy and equitable learning environments to better enhance the students' learning and development. The CASEL 5 core competency areas of social emotional learning are self-awareness, that is, understanding one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior. Social awareness, understanding the perspectives of others and the ability to empathize with people from diverse backgrounds. Self-management, managing one's own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. Responsible decision-making, making caring and constructive choices about personal behavior in a variety of social interactions. Relationship skills, establishing and maintaining healthy and supportive relationships to effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals and groups. These competency areas can be taught and applied at various stages in every learning process. It's important to be aware of them as a tutor because they all have an impact on a student's learning. So think back on the past few days. Can you identify 2 or 3, the 5 core competencies in your own behavior or the behaviors of others? Which ones and how did they show up? Okay, important point number 2, the benefits of SEL. We'll be discussing the benefits of SEL, so in your notebook for the next 5 minutes, write down what you think these benefits might be in relation to the learning process, so that as I explain how advantageous SEL can be, you can refer back to what you wrote down to see if you learned anything new. I don't think anyone could argue that we would be better off without empathy and kindness and sharing, etc. But more than 2 decades of research has shown that there are other benefits to education that promotes SEL, including long and short-term improvement of a student's social and emotional skills, attitudes about themselves and others, relationships, and academic performance. A decline in anxiety, behavior problems, negative attitudes towards learning, an increase in pro-social behaviors, such as kindness and sharing, empathy, and an improvement in career success, community engagement, and lifetime outcomes. Self-awareness can be expanded to include the acknowledgement and understanding of social identities with regards to race, class, gender, nationality, and family structure. With this knowledge, students can open up in a learning situation and will more easily understand perspectives of others, will relate more effectively with them. And so this is why it's good for tutors and students to be aware of and perhaps improve on their social and emotional intelligence themselves. Okay, important point number 3, the importance of empathy. In your notebook, take some time to write about your understanding of empathy. What is it? How would you rate your level of empathy? Is there room for improvement? Again, as I talk more about empathy, look back on what you wrote to see if you expanded your understanding of empathy. Empathy is one part of emotional intelligence. It's helpful to better understand it in a student-tutor relationship, especially to build trust, openness, and the desire to do one's best in a learning situation. It requires us to see things from someone else's point of view. And although empathy is usually developed as children, there are strategies that can be used to develop it further as adults in order to strengthen one's ability to teach and to learn. I will be talking about some strategies a little later. Now, there are 3 types of empathy. There's cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. Cognitive empathy is knowing how the other person feels and what they may be thinking. It's helpful in motivating others and understanding diverse viewpoints. It's a cold kind of empathy, based on thought as much as or more than emotion. And then you have emotional empathy. That's when you feel something along with the other person, almost as a physical response. Comforting a crying person causes you to cry as well. Now, this might be helpful in interpersonal relationships, but this type of empathy on its own can be overwhelming. It's too much feeling. So thirdly, then, you have compassionate empathy. It's more of a balance or middle ground between the first two. You can understand the other person's predicament and feel things along with them. And you may also be moved to help. You can consider the whole person. To further build upon or improve your empathetic responses, first, observe how you respond to other people in different situations. Think about ways you can increase empathy in your daily life. To help you get started, here are some ways to increase your level of empathy. Use active listening in conversations with others by making a conscious effort to not only hear the words that the other person is saying, but the complete message that's being communicated. Pay attention to the body language and other nonverbal cues, as well as the verbal message. Give people your full attention and avoid distractions when speaking and listening in a conversation. Share emotions when connecting with others. Have the courage to be vulnerable. Read or share short fictional stories, and as you discuss them, try to put yourself and your student into the character's position. So here's a practicing activity. Observe empathy in action. Give a written description of each type of empathy from your life, the news, or situations around you. Remember, that's cognitive, emotional, and compassionate empathy. All right, important point number 4. Social and emotional competencies can be taught, modeled, and practiced. As a child, do you remember learning in some form the social emotional competencies of SEL, or did they just happen? Both self-awareness and self-management belong to the interpersonal domain, intrapersonal. These skills may have been taught as children, as one learned to control anger or set goals or take care of and organize personal space like your bedroom or desk at school. Social awareness and relationship skills lie in the interpersonal domain. You may remember being taught these skills starting in kindergarten, the phrase works and plays well with others, or on our report cards, and probably even before that at home. Responsible decision-making overlaps both domains and relies on both self, that's personal behaviors, and others, it's social interactions. Young children are often told in school, make good choices, to encourage responsible decision-making. As an adult, there are also strategies that can be used to enhance one's social and emotional awareness, and also to help a student reach his or her potential and work from a place of trust in your relationship. These include mindfulness. That's a way of paying attention that is intentional in the present moment. It is done with an attitude of non-judgment, and it can improve working memory and reduce stress. It can also be as simple as closing your eyes and breathing deeply for a few minutes. Name the emotion you're bringing to a situation or to class. Have courage to say you're feeling sad or angry or confused, etc., so that you and your student know how each other is feeling and can better interact during the session, so that if one is feeling stressed, you can write that down, rip it up, throw away your stress or expectations or insecurities.
Hey, oh shoot. I'm sorry, are you filming?
Yeah, I can pause it. And then the quote of the day. Introduce a quote that is relevant to what your student is learning, or maybe to something in the news. Discuss and reflect on any beliefs and experiences related to the quote. Do you agree or disagree with it? Do you and your student share beliefs? Could he or she or they offer relevant insights from past experiences? And then a closing activity. Now, this is a time to show appreciation, share an aha moment, or offer an apology, something you think genuinely would be useful for your student to hear. Now, some of these strategies could be helpful at the beginning of your tutor-student relationship, as you get to know each other. Now, others are appropriate at any time, such as emotional check-ins. Can take as few as 3 to 5 minutes and can create a safe space for learning to occur. So here's a practice activity. Role play. Your student comes to class and they're obviously upset about something. Describe how you would make space for them to work through the emotions so that they can benefit from your teaching. Which strategy might you use? Important point number 5, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. For this last topic, I will be explaining the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Take a few minutes to think about and write about the two terms and what you think you know about them. Now, as I'm explaining this topic, again, refer to what you wrote down. Did you learn anything new about this topic? Think about a situation where you were having difficulty learning a new concept or subject in school like math. Maybe you jumped right to, I can't understand this, I'm no good at math. Do you think this type of reaction might affect your ability to grasp the concept? So here's where growth versus fixed mindsets come into play in a learning situation. A growth mindset is the belief that you can develop your talents and abilities through hard work, good strategies, help from other people. A fixed mindset, on the other hand, is the belief that talents and abilities are unalterable traits and can't be improved upon. It's important to be aware of these two mindsets in the tutoring processes, both in yourself and then in your student. We are all a mixture of both mindsets. Sometimes growth and sometimes fixed, according to what we perceive as threats, like challenges, mistakes, failures, or criticisms. Are we inspired to try new things, or are we anxious and defensive in the face of new challenges? We need to observe ourselves as educators and what triggers anxiety, what makes us put up barriers on ourselves. A growth mindset has a profound effect on students' motivation and learning. It can be taught. Research has shown that the brain changes while learning. Neurons grow stronger connections when you work on hard things. But people experiencing a fixed mindset may be more resistant to working on new or difficult material. And this can become a crucial issue with adult learners especially. Their tendencies and mindsets can be more ingrained. But with your student, watch out for adopting a false growth mindset, which is when educators just praise effort alone. Now, for example, a tutor may say frequently, great effort, when the student really isn't learning or progressing. Telling the student that you can do this or you can do anything, it's a bit of a hollow promise. So instead, Acknowledge when your student is not learning effectively. And then work with them to find new learning strategies. Here are 3 ways of establishing a growth mindset. 1, set learning goals rather than performance goals. This holds your student accountable to the process, not to the result. I will run every day for 10 minutes is a learning goal. I will win a marathon is a bit of a performance goal. Set these goals within the Goldilocks zone, where it's not too easy nor too hard. Don't get them to read a chapter book if your student can't decode words. Instead, read the book to them while you work on phonics at the same time. Model vulnerability and a willingness to fail. Demonstrate that it's okay to say, I don't know yet. Not knowing or not succeeding is just a part of the process, and the key is to help keep going. Here's a practice activity. Imagine that one of your students' goals is to improve their computer skills. As you start teaching this skill, you find that your student is reluctant to try new things. They exhibit a fixed mindset by saying, I've never been good at computers. So role play as a teacher in this situation and write about what you might do or say to foster a growth mindset in this student. Think about these things as you imagine this scenario. Setting learning goals rather than performance goals. Setting these goals within the Goldilocks zone. Modeling vulnerability and a willingness to fail. So in summary, what we should remember about SEL is that the approach to it should be one of creating more equitable and authentic learning environments and outcomes. It is helpful for educators to develop their own self-awareness, their social-emotional intelligence, and cultural awareness, so that we can create and nourish safe and healthy learning environments for our students. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lesson.